Good morning, everybody. This is Karen, and it is time for another long overdue stitch with me. Gosh, I didn't realize how long it's been since I did one of these. So, what do we have to talk about today? Well, my good news is I'm out of my cast. Let me back out of here a little bit. I'm out of my cast, and I am now in a splint. Just this little splint that goes right to my wrist. This is just a piece of tube gauze that I put between the splint and my hand because it just gets so hot. But out of the splint, or out of the cast, in the splint, and the really good news is I can now once again thread my needle the way I love. Oops, it's a little hard, but I can use my thumb and I can thread my needle the way I love to thread my needle again. So no more needle threaders. Speaking of needle threaders, someone asked on one of my other videos about, and I believe it was this needle threader that I had, how you use that. So just a quick demo before we get too far going here is you just rest your needle on this stable bar, and then you just thread the wire through the eye of your needle like that. Let me find a piece of thread here. Then you take your thread and put it through. I'm so used to working with these two fingers, I can't, I'm having a hard time not. Okay, you just thread it through the wire. Okay, is that focusing? There we go. And then grab a hold of the needle and just pull it through, and that threads your needle. So that's how you use these. Very simple. Just put this wire through the eye of your needle, put the thread through the wire, and then pull it through. So easy peasy, lemon squeezy. Okay. So today I'm going to work on Once Upon a Time, which is the piece that I would love to do for my daughter. Because it's all about reading books, and I think I told you this before, my daughter is an 8th grade language arts teacher, and she is just an avid reader. Gosh, as a child, I could hardly keep her in books, and she was reading. The difficult part was she was reading, her reading ability was far above her age. So finding appropriate books for her was also a challenge. But to this day, gosh, thank God for libraries. Thank God for Kindle Unlimited, because even though she's a teacher, she still always has her nose in a book, which is a good thing. And her kiddos, oh my goodness, her kids also like reading, which is also another good thing. She's, especially Abe, the older one, she's read to him, oh wow, ever since he was a teeny tiny baby. And he loves books. If I ever, like for Christmas, don't know what to buy them, the deal is get them books. And Abe, oh my goodness, what a cutie patootie. He had his first day of kindergarten the other day. Oh my gosh, he was so thrilled and so happy. It was so cute. His daddy helped him FaceTime me after kindergarten on Tuesday, and he was just so tickled. He was all smiles and happy and told me all about his day. It was just so much fun. Both of them, him and Emmy, they just melt my heart. They are just the greatest kids. It's just so great to be a grandma. So that's my news there. Still stitching on the diagonal, and oh my heavens, I have had a ton of new members in the group. Oh my goodness, every time I go on, I'm adding new members. In fact, the other day when I checked, 2 days ago, when I checked, I added, I think it was 15 or 16 more people at one time. I forgot to look before I started this, but I think, oh my goodness, I think we're somewhere in the neighborhood of 900 members. It's just amazing. And my Flosstube, holy cow. I didn't look today, but the last time I looked, it was 5,300 subscribers. You guys just blow my mind. It's just hard to believe that many people want to listen to me ramble on about nothing and watch me stitch. You guys, it just blows my mind. You guys are just awesome. Just totally awesome. It's fabulous. So I'm gonna say that a lot of you at least are trying and possibly liking the way I'll find my words today. You're liking stitching on the diagonal, and there are several different ways. I mean, some people do it a little bit differently than I do, and that's okay. Some people stitch on the diagonal, but they stitch by color. Oh, here, let me zoom you in a little bit more. There we go. And that's fine. Some people, instead of going across the whole design, like starting up here at the top and working their way all the way down across the whole, rather than a page, some people just do a page at a time. And I do have a question about that, and you can tell me your thoughts in the comments. Those of you that you stitch on the diagonal, but you stitch within the confines of a page, and you're not feathering like the blunt edge of the page. So you still have that straight line coming down where your page ends. Do you get page lines there? I would be curious to know that. There's nothing wrong with doing it that way. I'm just wondering, and I know it's easier to stitch that way, to keep your place that way and not have to flip between pages when you're stitching. But part of my head says that kind of defeats the purpose of stitching on the diagonal. Especially if you get that page line. So I'd be curious. I'm just curious if that is the case. Do you get a page line there? I should post that in the group too and see if that's something that we can all talk about, because it wonders me. I have stopped stitching like the straight edge of a page because for me the goal in stitching this way is to not get page lines. I don't get a diagonal line either when I stitch this way. So for me, it's working out wonderfully that I have no lines at all. So I'm just curious what the rest of you are finding. I mean, that's always a point of discussion, because like I said, the goal is certainly still a little tricky using this hand. The goal is to avoid lines. Maybe I should have done my exercises before I started here this morning, because in the morning this hand's a little stiff, but it's coming along. So anyway, what I was going to say is people stitch their diagonals a little differently. I have found, for me, to go, stitch by stitch, line by line, stitch by stitch works the best. My stitches look the neatest. In fact, I really love the way my stitches look and the way they lay. So what I do is, okay, this color I'm going to use here and stitch it, and then I'm going to park it in the next place it's needed. So the next place it's needed is over here. So rather than stitch that stitch, I'm going to park it there. Because what happens is these stitches are going to cover up that thread carry. Now I gotta find another color here. 470. I laid them all out right here so I didn't have to go flipping through my floss buddy to find my next thread. Okay. That's another thing. I went back to bobbins, and I'll put a clip in at the end. I got a floss buddy from Karina at Bags Plus, and I just love it. I got 180 pockets, so I have my thread for 2 Heaven and Earth designs in it, and Those are the two that I'm going to rotate between. Oh, here, I want to show you this too. Let's see if we can really, oh, that's about the closest I can get you in. Another way, when you're working, this is 20 count Aida cloth. And when we're working on Aida cloth, there's another easy way to start your stitch. If you go down in your upper right hand corner, okay? And then you poke up through, split your threads and come up through in the middle. And sometimes that's a little, there we go. Come up in the middle. Okay, can you see that? I hope so. All right, and pull it through till you just have the littlest smidge of a tail. Do not ask me why this works, because I can't explain it. And when I first saw this, I thought, oh my goodness, that is gonna pull right through. But for some reason it doesn't. So you go back down in the upper right, okay? And it kind of takes that little tail with it, but you come up then. This is the first leg. You're making a half stitch, or I'm sorry, a quarter stitch where the first leg of your X is going to be. So if you stitch the other, if your first leg goes bottom right to upper left, you would do this in the opposite corners. So I'm going to come up in my bottom left, and I'm going to pull that, and look at that. Look at that. Whoops, if you pull too hard, it comes out. So let's do it again. But it really does hold. I haven't had anything come loose yet. So, okay. I'm gonna go back down here again. Okay. I'm gonna come up in the bottom left, and it just stays. Now, if you're gonna really yank on it, yeah, but then you can do the first leg of your stitch and it just really stays nicely. I was surprised. So another little tidbit, I forget I would give credit to who I saw doing that, but in all honesty, I saw it a while ago and I can't remember what video it was, so there you have it. I have no idea anymore what video it was. I'm just so glad I can thread a needle again. That's amazing. Okay, but what I do then is I just continue to do one X at a time. Okay, working my way across and parking my thread where it's going to be used the next time. Yes, it is a lot of threading a needle. I'll give you that. I do not debate that at all. And it may be a tad, well, no, it is slower. However, I think you have to sit back and weigh the advantages and the disadvantages to decide, you know, is this the method that you want to use? For me, that answer is yes. Disadvantages, a lot of needle threading. A lot of needle threading. Because you figure you're threading a needle about every stitch. That takes time. Because you may be only doing, you're not, you know, Heaven and Earth Designs, let's be real, you're not going to get big blocks of color unless you have an all black background. And yeah, we know how boring that can get. Ask me about my fractal that I haven't touched in months. And mainly because of that, it's black and more black and pages of black. and I get bored with it. So I'll be honest, I don't hardly work on it. Okay. So that's, constant needle threading is a disadvantage. It takes longer. Another disadvantage. But then you look at what are the advantages, What are the advantages? Well, the advantages are my stitches look, pardon me while I pat myself on the back, my stitches look awesome. They are perfect. You don't see any stitches that are pulled loose because you came up in a hole that already had 3 threads in it, and when your needle comes up, you're pulling some of that thread along, and that's why you get that bumpy look. You don't have that. I can lay this down, go do whatever, cook supper, put laundry in, do whatever, come back, pick it up, and know exactly where I am. I don't have to fuss and figure out okay, I'm working 310 down this column, and where am I? I don't have that problem. Oh, I marked that one already. Because I know exactly where I am. Which to me is a really big advantage. The other really huge advantage is because you're stitching every X and you're stitching one stitch. You're going row by row, stitch by stitch. I don't have to come back and fill in and hunt for those isolated stitches. Okay, maybe I have to start a thread for one stitch of a color and end it right away, but so be that. I'd much rather do that and have that stitch completed than have to come back at a later time and hunt for it and try and figure out what color it is and all of that. To me, this is worth it. So, and this is just advantages and disadvantages for me. Yours may be different. Okay, where did I parked that at the wrong place, you silly girl. 1, 2, 3. 1, 2, 3. Yep, should have been over here. Okay, we can fix that. And sometimes I do that too. I park it at the wrong place. Sometimes I miss. Oftentimes, because I have my diagonal highlighted in yellow, there's sometimes where I miss seeing that first stitch, and then I park in the wrong place. But as you see, that was very, very easily fixed. 1, 2, 3. I parked it here when I should have been here, so we can easily figure out what thread this is. Use it here, park it back. That's another reason, personally, I prefer to use grid lines, because it makes, if you do park wrong, first of all, I think it makes parking easier. But second of all, if you do park wrong like I did, where I parked it over here instead of here, I can easily figure out which thread I need to move and put that stitch in here. It helps to be able to figure it out easier. And if you get to something and it doesn't make sense, I think you catch your mistakes a whole lot quicker than when you stitch cross country or by color. You know, if you're stitching cross country and you misplace stitches, you're not going to find that until you go to put in stitches around it, and then becomes the question, how much do you unstitch in order to fix that, or how do you creatively compensate for that error? You know, those are all questions you have to ask yourself. There we go. You know, when you're using your different methods of stitching. You know, and everybody's different. Everybody likes something different. Everybody, you know, needs to find their own way. There's some that stitch instead of line by line and having this straight diagonal. There's people that stitch the 100 stitches in a square and do that on a diagonal. You know, and it's really to each their own. The whole bottom line is, are you enjoying what you're doing? Do you love your pattern that you're stitching? Because first of all, this is a marathon. It is not something you are going to stitch in a few months. It's probably something that is going to take you a few years. My grand illusion of a goal on this one was to have it done by Christmas. Oh, golly, that is not going to happen. Maybe next Christmas, or not this coming Christmas, but the next Christmas. Now, that I could see as a reasonable goal, because this is a quick stitch, even though, let's see, even though it is 300 by 286, it's still they consider it a quick stitch, and I think that's because it is just a section taken out of one of the bookshelves. So now, probably you're asking, why did she just do what she just did? I stitched this stitch, I skipped these two, and the same color was used here. So I stitched those right away. And I did that just because it's at the end of the row. No other particular reason. So now I'll go back. I have to add a color. 733. Oh, that's too long. Where's my scissors? There we go. And I'll show you something else, and I'm sure a lot of you already know this. I often see stitchers, when they're pulling their threads, they take their thread and then they do this to take them apart, and then they get that twisty, windy thing, and it probably is going to end up knotting on you. The easiest way to separate your threads is to tap on the end, and then all your threads are going to separate. See that? Take a hold of put the 6 strands between your thumb and your forefinger, like this. See that? I can use my thumb, guys. Take a hold of one strand, okay, and just pull, okay, so that your strand comes out, and then you can just straighten this out again, and you have no tangles. Easiest way. If you need, it works, you know, no matter how long your strand of floss is, that will work. Even if you have cut it long enough that you're stitching with 2 strands and you want to do a loop start, separate them that way. If you're stitching with 2 strands and you're going to start the traditional way, pull each strand separately and then put them back together. Okay, they will lay much nicer if you do that. What did I do here? I'm starting this one my old way because I have a thread ended in this square, so I'm just going to do the first half. I did a little bit of an away thread. I'm going to do the first half, then I'm going to pull that little end under, and that way, because it's caught on the back. Down 2 and over 1. Park it there. Okay. Alrighty. So I hope this has once again helped with understanding how to stitch on the diagonal this way. So I'm going to end it here and say, hope you all have a great day and a great weekend, and those people in Florida, stay safe. So until next time.